Hi, I'm Lance, and today we're going to learn a few lessons from the Master of the Thrones himself, George Raymond Richard Martin. How iconic is that intro?
The greatest influence that Faulkner has had on me is his Nobel Prize acceptance speech. In particular, he said the only thing worth writing about is the human heart in conflict with itself.
George Martin likes to bring this up a lot, and I think it's a terrific way to look at stories. Basically, it's about defining a character and evolving things around it to challenge the essence of what that character is. You can see it in Martin's work all the time. Ned Stark is the man of honor, and he gets shipped down to King's Landing, where honor isn't just worthless, it's a liability. Jon Snow goes from being the underdog bastard in Winterfell to be effectively the son of a lord among the thieves and commoners of Castle Black. Arya wants to be a fighter when she's supposed to be a lady, and the next second she's forced to fight for her life without really having the means to do it.
Be gone now, Arya.
And if you think about it, that's basically what life does to us on a daily basis. Hopefully on a different scale, but since we live through similar struggles, we can help but relate with these characters. It works so well that when Jaime Lannister has a chance to give voice to his inner conflicts, he goes from being one of the most hated characters ever to be one of the best. So often readers imagine George as this cruel bearded devil that gets a kick out of tormenting his poor characters. But that couldn't be more far from the truth. What he does is to create the condition to maximize the inner conflict inside these people and see how they react. Sometimes they grow and survive, sometimes they don't. And that's a very powerful way to combine character and story development. It gives soul and richness to the story. Let's go with lesson number 2.
I have always said that I believe there are two types of writers, which I call the architect and the gardener. The architect plans everything in advance. Everything is finalized before you dig the hole in the ground or drive the first nail. The gardener, he has some idea what's going to come up. The gardener knows whether he's planted an oak tree or whether he's planted a radish. So it's not totally random, but there's a lot that goes to chance and to other elements with the gardener. All writers are a mixture of both, but some lean much more heavily to one side than to the other. One is quicker, but the other one, to my mind, is more an adventure, is more interesting.
Gardeners and architects. If you're starting out, it will take some time to decide what side works best for you. As for myself, I can say that after years trying to be an architect, I had enough outline collapsing under my feet to accept the fact that I'm a gardener, which was kind of a shock because I hate gardening. And if you tend to the gardener side as well, but don't feel comfortable with it, I can tell you this. The reason I didn't like the idea of gardening my story was that writing is already full of every possible uncertainty. The last thing I wanted was to start a story only to find out that it goes into nothing. But when I started to stop worrying about it and think better at the general direction of my story, letting things move forward in an organic way, I started enjoying the discovering process. So for me, it was a matter of embracing the gardening role and play its strength instead of being worried about its weaknesses. And yes, if you don't plan your stories, you'll end up writing yourself in a few dead ends sometimes. But so what? As long as you have enjoyed the writing process, it shouldn't be a problem. And maybe you'll find a way to use that material in the story. On the other hand, if you're an architect, what can I say? You are one lucky bastard. Lesson 3.
Reading a lot of history, and I would say to my wife as I read some of these histories, you can't make this stuff up. Listen to what happened here. And I'd read some incredible incident, and then, I'd file off the serial numbers and change a few things and do a version of that for my books. So something like The Red Wedding, as I've said in other interviews, was very much inspired by the Black Dinner of Scotland and the Glencoe Massacre. Of course, The War of the Roses was a huge influence over everything, the Hundreds Years War. All of that was Christopher DeMille.
My favorite part there is that you can't really make some of that stuff up. What real people can do can outclass writers' fantasy easily any day of the week. And I should read much more about history. Maybe you should do it as well. That's why I'm bringing this up. For both of us, you know? One thing to note is that there are two different kinds of histories. There's the cool history, where at the Black Dinner of Scotland, a bull's head, the symbol for the execution of traitors, is served at the table right before the massacre. And there's the boring history, where no dramatic bull's head has ever been served, and usually also the most accurate version of the events. But for me, cool history beats the other kind 10 to 1, because I'm not an historian, just a writer looking for some inspiration. The point is, when in doubt, history is always a good source. And this was everything I hold dear from good old George. By the way, everyone always asks him about Game of Thrones and the Song of Ice and Fire, but before bringing Westeros to life, he had 30 years of great writing behind him. I really like his older short stories from the 70s, I believe it was the 70s. Check them out if you have the chance. As for me, this is the end of the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.